now the religious buildings dividing communities around the country. The first mosque in Australia was built in the late 1800s, but with a growing Muslim population, there's increasing demand for them, and that can trigger fierce and ugly reactions from neighbours. Steve Marshall reports.
And Lord, we thank you in Jesus' name for answered prayer.
Peace and goodness to the sick, the depressed, the bereaved.
It's one of our basic human rights, the right to freedom of religion. But sadly, not all places of worship are welcome.
Islam has no place in any country around the world.
We will not stop fighting. We will not put down our weapons until we reach your land.
The rise of ISIS and the threat of homegrown terror fueling community paranoia.
Muslims are the terrorists.
We will not allow Islam to take over this country.
Tonight, the incredibly complex and delicate issue of operating mosques in Australia. We examine the role these places of worship play in our society and investigate the potential number of new mosques coming to a suburb near you. Our story starts here, in a quiet suburban street. It's just like any other in Australia, but residents are rattled by the Muslim men and women visiting this local mosque.
People coming and going, you don't know who they are.
This is our home.
Yeah.
Where do we go?
They've resisted this mosque ever since it replaced a church a few years ago. Now residents have lost another battle to stop the mosque extending operation from 3 days a week to 7.
Definitely there is nothing to fear whatsoever. Unfortunately, it is a sign of the time.
Dr. Jamal Rifi is a respected Islamic spokesman. He says Australia's Muslim community continues to be a victim of circumstances beyond its control.
The community image and reputation has been battered through the media for far too long. And for reasons not of our faults. Probably situation is heated up in the Middle East and it impacted on us very negatively.
Italian, there's Greeks, there's Asians, Lebanese,
and there's
like,
all different religions, and we all get along.
Mother and daughter, Lynette and Jacinta, insist their concerns over the mosque in their neighbourhood are nothing to do with religion or race.
We were told that it was going to be a mosque.
Yes.
And then we were concerned about the number of people attending, where they were going to park.
Yeah.
All of the traditions that come with it being a mosque, which is respectfully understandable, but just the location for what is required, it doesn't suit.
Lunchtime on Friday, the busiest time of the week for mosques and prayer halls. Most of the cars belong to worshippers. The new mosque's been great for locals like Ahmed Ramadan.
It's a big thing, not just for them, but for us as well, or for their children, you know, and their grandchildren. Because it's convenient location, a convenient spot.
Despite a recommendation from an independent panel, the Canterbury Council in multicultural southwest Sydney allowed the mosque to open 7 days a week.
People were disappointed and upset.
And then obviously the roof. Linda Eisler is the only Canterbury councillor to vote against the extension. What's the flow-on effect if council doesn't listen to their residents?
Their residents become alienated, they feel angry, potential loss of a feeling of community and commitment to Canterbury. But that goes for both sides. And I mean, I think we've seen this in the past, that the Muslim community have felt alienated and disaffected and angry.
Councils across Australia are under increasing pressure to accommodate growing Muslim communities. According to the 2011 census, a touch over 476,000 or 2.2% of our population are Muslims. But there's only 102 official mosques in our country. That's 4,670 Muslims per mosque. There are dozens of prayer halls like this one around the country, but the 5 daily prayers are not held regularly in them. It's 12:30 and this mosque is clearly jam-packed. It's in breach of the maximum number of people allowed to pray in here. But the man in charge, who won't talk to us on camera, says it just highlights that there is a shortage of worship places in Australia, and he can hardly turn people away at the gate.
Definitely there is a shortage of religious places for Muslims in Australia.
Dr. Jamal Rifi believes Australia will be a safer place if more mosques are built. The shortage leading to the birth of unofficial garage mosques, making it difficult to identify radical Islamic groups.
Unfortunately, that has led to smaller places of worship to exist where we don't know who is the Imam, what his religious studies, what his background, what his view. And that has led to many of these small places where we don't know what actually sort of teaching is taking place in those places.
It's an attack that would terrify and horrify Australians.
Religious extremism has rocked suburban Australia.
5 teenagers were arrested in early morning raids.
Anti-terror teams swooping on radical Muslims.
200 counter-terror officers from Victoria.
The fear of homegrown terrorism and fighting enemies within now prevalent in communities.
I'm not terrorist. Once a mosque is approved and it operates and it isn't the scary place that people imagine and it doesn't do the things that people thought it might do, things do calm down.
Professor Kevin Dunn is an expert in human geography and urban studies at the University of Western Sydney. He says development applications, or DAs, for mosques are twice as likely to be rejected by council compared to those lodged by churches.
So there's an unevenness of treatment. Now, there might be reasons for that. It might be that the non-Christian groups are less well-resourced, less well-cognizant of the Australian development system or something, but it's a substantive unequal outcome.
Finding out where new mosques are to be built is difficult. Development applications aren't required to outline the faith of those who'll be attending. We managed to find 17 mosque projects in various stages of development around Australia. Most are in Western Sydney, including Regent's Park, Bankstown, Auburn, Marylands, Punchbowl and Mount Druitt, and one mosque in the CBD. In Queensland, Maroochydore and Toowoomba, Gosnells in WA and Greenfields in South Australia, Gungahlin in our capital, and 5 in Victoria, Newport, CBD, Werribee, Somerton and Craigieburn. In many cases, Islamic community groups have bought the land and are raising funds for the construction phase. That includes this ambitious project to revamp an existing small mosque in Melbourne's Craigieburn. It'll cost up to $10 million. It's an expensive exercise to bring any mosque project to fruition, according to Melbourne town planner Bill Kuznichuk.
Really expensive, and that means something in the order of most probably $250,000 to file the application, the plans, the expert reports, the advice that's required in order to support it. Once it's filed, if you have to contest that particular application, I would anticipate another perhaps $200,000 to defend it.
The small mosque at the centre of this neighbourhood stoush in southwest Sydney has also cost its supporters big money. $1.6 million has been spent on the land, renovations to the old church, plus environment and traffic impact reports. The local council also going to great lengths to try and keep the peace. Now, in a move that enraged homeowners here, the former leader of the Residents Action Group against this mosque, well, he struck a deal with council. He used to live here. The council bought his property and bulldozed it, creating a bigger buffer zone between the mosque and other residents. The entire exercise costing council in excess of $1 million to silence a noisy neighbour. How tough has this been for council?
Oh, it's been very tough. Every time we face angry residents, it's hard because to satisfy both sides, somebody has to give up something.
And to find out where any proposed places of worship might be built near you, contact your local council or search the meeting minutes on the council website.